Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. So let me begin again. It's a great privilege for me to be able to be here in Istanbul, this remarkable, historic city, in a country, Turkey, that is moving at such an amazing pace and accomplishing so much. And we talked about that briefly today, what a great partner Turkey is and has been as we define really a new world in which we face an extraordinary number of new challenges. So, Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you for your continual generous welcome here. And you are right, we are talking frequently, maybe twice a week or so, and I think it's having a benefit, and I'm grateful to you for the work that you and your Prime Minister did so that President Obama could complete his mission when he was visiting in Israel. I think that was a very important step forward, and we thank you for those efforts. And we look forward, obviously, to the completing of that mission. Mr. Minister, as I think you know, this has been a difficult 24 hours for those of us in the United States, and particularly for the family of the State Department. Yesterday, we lost a very bright and brave young woman, a young diplomat. We lost her to a horrific attack in Afghanistan. And today, our hearts are broken. Anne Smedinghoff was 25 years old, Mr. Foreign Minister, and I think that in this tragedy, there is a stark contrast for all of the world to see between two very different sets of values. On the one hand, you have Anne, a selfless, idealistic young woman who woke up yesterday morning and set out to bring textbooks to school children, to bring them knowledge, children she had never met, to help them to be able to build a future. And Anne and those with her were attacked by Taliban terrorists who woke up that day not with a mission to educate or to help, but with a mission to destroy. A brave American was determined to brighten the light of learning through books, written in the native tongue of the students that she'd never met, but whom she felt compelled to help. And she was met by a cowardly terrorist determined to bring darkness and death to total strangers. These are the challenges that our citizens face, not just in Afghanistan, but in many dangerous parts of the world, where a nihilism, an empty approach, is willing to take life rather than give it. What did that terrorist accomplish? What did his cowardice and his nihilism buy him? The grief of parents who now have to bury their children. It also brought the strengthened resolve of a nation, a diplomatic corps, a military, all resources, determined to continue the hard work of helping people to help themselves. So yesterday we saw the vilest form of terrorism, but as I hope the world will have learned by now, and if it hasn't, it will over time, America does not and will not cower before terrorism. We're going to forge on, we're going to step up, we're going to continue to do the work that we do to try to improve the lives of other people. We put ourselves in harm's way because we believe in bringing hope to our brothers and sisters all over the world, knowing that we share universal human values with people all over the world of dignity, of opportunity, of progress. So it is now up to us to determine what the legacy of this tragedy will be. And where others seek to destroy, we intend to show a stronger determination in order to brighten our shared future, even when others try to darken it with violence. That was Anne's mission when she woke up yesterday morning, and it will be ours every single day from this morning through the next, as long as God gives us the ability to make that choice. So I want to emphasize that Anne was everything that is right about our Foreign Service. She was smart and capable, committed to our country. I had the privilege of meeting her, Mr. Foreign Minister, just a few days ago when I was in Afghanistan. She was part of my team. And she was someone who worked hard and put her life on the line so that others could live a better life. Our hearts go out to Anne's mother and father, with whom I spoke yesterday, and to the two sisters and the brother who survived her, to her friends and colleagues at home in Chicago, in Caracas, where she served her first tour of duty in the Foreign Service, and in Kabul, as well as around the world. And we also express our sadness and our condolences to every member of the United States Department of State with whom I am today privileged to work and call colleagues. Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you for allowing me the privilege of saying a few words about this remarkable young woman, but she is, I think, at the center of the work that you do, the work that I do, and we all try to do, to provide people with peace and with opportunity. Together, Mr. Foreign Minister, you have mentioned today how Turkey and the United States are committed to tackling very difficult issues. And that is why I have returned to Turkey, where too many people have been dislocated in Syria, in the Middle East. And the challenges are real, and our nations have an opportunity to be able to cooperate in a unique way. And I thank you on behalf of Mr. President Obama and the American people for the extraordinary cooperation that Turkey is offering. Today, the Foreign Minister and I discussed our work to combat terrorism in all its forms, including yesterday's attack, and also the violence that has plagued Turkey for 3 long decades. We applaud, we admire the work of the Turkish government to peacefully try to end the violence that has sometimes struck it internally. And I think that all of us join in welcoming the PKK's commitment to lay down their arms, and we salute the work of you, Mr. Foreign Minister, and the Prime Minister in your efforts to bring that about. It has been the best of diplomacy and of leadership. As we know, no peace process is easy. It always takes courage and determination, the willingness to speak out to overcome years of mistrust and of bloodshed. And this moment is no different. Difficult steps lie ahead, but the Foreign Minister and I are confident that a lasting peace will improve the lives of all of Turkey's citizens, and that we can have an impact on the lives of other people here in this region. The redrafting of Turkey's constitution is indeed a prime opportunity to lay the groundwork for that shared future. And I reiterated to the Foreign Minister our hope that the protection of universal rights and basic freedoms will be at the center of this process, as he has expressed to me so many times, and our hope that the Constitution will respect and reflect this country's remarkable diversity, which is part of its great strength. The Foreign Minister and I, as he mentioned, did indeed talk about Syria. And I thank the Foreign Minister for the constant pressure that the government of Turkey has placed on the Assad regime, which, as we both have said repeatedly, must go. Turkey has also been incredibly generous to the refugees of this crisis, and they have taken them in by the thousands, kept their borders open, done everything possible to try to respond to that increasing humanitarian crisis. And the United States and Turkey will continue cooperating towards the shared goal of a peaceful transition within Syria. Finally, and let me just say, we did agree, and we look forward to a meeting of the Syria Core Group in the near term in order to review what we discussed here today, but also to try to coordinate more effectively the approach to the challenges of that particular issue. I reiterated today how much President Obama and I are grateful for their leadership in bringing about the telephone call between Prime Minister Erdogan and Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama. Turkey and Israel are both vital allies of the United States, and we are hopeful that their agreement to restore normalization between their countries will actually help to open the door to greater cooperation so that we can, all of us, work together to promote peace and to be part of the peace process that the Foreign Minister referred to. So once again, Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you for having me here and welcoming me at this difficult moment. I look forward to continuing to work with you and to strengthening our relationship. We're grateful for your creative diplomacy, for your energetic diplomacy, and we are very, very grateful, as I said previously, for the vision that you have expressed about the road ahead and the things we can do together to work on all of these critical issues. And I look forward to continuing that work with you. Thank you.
Secretary Kerry, what exact steps do you want to see Turkey and Israel take to achieve the normalization to which they are committed to? Do you have a specific timeline in mind? Do you want to see things done before Prime Minister Erdogan comes to Washington next month? Are you troubled by the somewhat triumphalist tone that has been taken in Turkey after the agreement, the billboard posters of a downcast Prime Minister Netanyahu looking at the ground? And on the Almaty talks, do you see, given that Catherine Ashton says there's been no narrowing of the gaps, you're still far apart, do you see any point in continuing the conversation, particularly ahead of the Iranian elections?
Let me answer the second part of the question first and then come back. With respect to Almaty, Lady Cathy Ashton and Undersecretary Wendy Sherman have made it clear that there was somewhat of a gap that remains, obviously, as a consequence of the discussions that they had in Almaty. And I think that we would have hoped that we might have been able to move that somewhat closer. But the door is still open to doing that, and yes, indeed, it is important to continue to talk and to try to find the common ground. I think the President has made it clear, and I would reiterate today, that this is not an endless process. This is not something where you can play to the clock. You can't just delay and talk for the sake of talking. So we would repeat to Iran, it is our desire to have a diplomatic solution, but this choice really lies in the hands of Iranians. If you have a peaceful program for nuclear power, as a number of nations do, it is not hard to prove to the world that it is peaceful. Those other nations do that today. The reason that Iran is increasingly finding itself isolated and in a position of being sanctioned is because they have chosen not to live up to the international requirements and standards with respect to verification about their program. And the international community, not the United States, not a religion, not one particular philosophy, but countries under the United Nations and through the international community have come together and asked Iran, if your program is peaceful, please take the steps that are rational in order to prove it to the world. Now that's what we're waiting for. But as I said earlier and repeat again, this is not an interminable process. So we hope that out of Almaty will come a narrowing of some of the differences. Diplomacy is a painful task and a task for the patient. And you need to take the time to work through some of these things. Obviously, there is an election. That complicates the choices with respect to the politics of Iran. And we're aware of that. But we will continue. The President is determined to continue to pursue the diplomatic channel. We will continue to have discussions through the P5+1 process, and we remain open and hopeful that a diplomatic solution can be found. Now, with respect to the Israel-Turkey track, it is not for the United States to be setting conditions or terms with respect to what the Prime Minister's schedule ought to be or what the requirements of Turkey are with respect to that process. We have said, and we say again, we would like to see this relationship that is important to stability in the Middle East, critical to the peace process itself. We would like to see this relationship get back on track in its full measure. To be back on track in its full measure, it is imperative that the compensation component of the agreement be fulfilled, that the ambassadors be returned, and that full relationship be embraced. But it's not up to us to discuss the timing. That's up to the parties themselves. There's going to be a meeting shortly, and I'm confident that there will be goodwill on both sides. The foreign minister has expressed to me very clearly, in response to an inquiry by me, that they have taken steps to try to prevent any kind of sense of triumphalism. It has not come from the government. In fact, there has been limited response by the government itself, and I think it's important for everybody to take note of that. I think the government of Turkey has responded sensitively and thoughtfully to this, and they would like to see this, and I'll let the foreign minister, obviously he will speak for himself, they would like to see this process as the building block that they worked hard, incidentally. Foreign Minister Davutoglu and I worked hard together to try to make sure that this was something that could take place. And the President and the Prime Minister, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Turkey, and the Prime Minister of Israel all came together and engaged in this phone call for a purpose. Now, if one or two people or a few people break out and make comments, that should not cloud the overall benefit and courage which accompanied the choices that were made on both sides with respect to this issue. And it's my hope that people will keep their eyes on the bigger goal, which is the relationship, the possibilities of peace, and putting the past into the past. Now, for the families, I would say to them, we know what it's like to have lost people in any kind of situation where you think somehow it was wrongful. And we have ways of dealing with that. The government is working hard in order to address that. Our sympathies go to those families, and we hope that in the days ahead that this issue can be appropriately resolved and put behind us so that we can move forward to the larger strategic challenges that we face.
CNN Türk'ten Hande Aşık efendim. If both Mr. Minister and Mr. Secretary can answer this question. We understand that Turkey is getting ready to play a more active role in the Middle East peace process. I was wondering if there's any specific proposal for what Turkey's contribution could be, especially regarding maybe bringing Hamas in line with international expectations. And in that vein, Mr. Secretary, do you see Prime Minister Erdogan's visit, or planned visit to Gaza, plans to visit Gaza as a looming crisis, as seems to be suggested by certain media outlets in Israel and also in the United States? And if I can briefly ask a question on Syria, we understand from certain press reports that there are plans to maybe establish buffer zones on the Jordanian-Syrian border, on the Syrian side of the border. Is there a similar discussion regarding the north of Syria, south of Turkey, north of Syria? Thank you.
Okay, let me handle the second part of that first, as I did earlier. With respect to Syria, I'm not going to discuss military strategy or plans that we're not making or I'm not aware of. I've heard speculation. I hear a lot of discussion about different things like that. I'd just say to you that Foreign Minister Davutoglu and I had a very precise and clear discussion about some of the things that need to happen with respect to creating the climate for a transition from the Assad regime to the future. And we are both committed. Our countries are committed. Our leaders are committed, President Obama, Prime Minister Erdogan, to effecting that transition. And we're going to look for the most effective ways to try to bring it about with the least violence and the most rapid transition, because this is having a profound impact on the humanitarian situation, the loss of life within the country, and the refugees who are now in Lebanon, in Turkey, and in Jordan. So it is our hope that over the next weeks, there will be greater clarity. I'm leaving from the Middle East after I leave here and go to Israel. I'll be going to London for the ministerial meeting, and we will be there having some discussions about Syria. And then subsequently, the Foreign Minister and I have agreed in principle on the timing somewhere soon of a core group meeting in order to follow up on that and to focus in on what the options may be. So I think we need to let that process work through, but suffice it to say that none of us have lost any clarity to our resolve with respect to the need to increase the pressure so that President Assad's calculation changes, and so that hopefully the real goal, which is a peaceful transition, could in fact be effected. Now, that may not be possible, but if it is not, we certainly are not going to stand by and allow him to continue to do to the people of Syria what he has been doing. With respect to Turkey's role in the peace process, we did have a discussion, and I'm now late to get to further discussion with the Prime Minister, and I apologize to him that we're running late. Turkey can be a key an important contributor to the process of peace in so many ways. It has already contributed just through the decision that has been made to move to resolve the issue of the flotilla and to move beyond the apology to the compensation and to the next steps. That's important first steps. But subsequent to that, you heard the Foreign Minister talk a moment ago about the need to deal with the economics. The West Bank, Gaza together both need to transform. Now, obviously, it's more complicated to deal with Gaza than the West Bank for all the obvious reasons, but Turkey can be very helpful, perhaps, in transitioning that component of the process, as well as in helping to build on our efforts to transform the economics of the West Bank itself. And I may have more to say about that after I have been in the discussions I have coming up in the next couple of days. But Turkey can be very, very central, not only to the on-the-ground transformation, but also to helping to create the climate for peace within the community of nations. Turkey's voice is vital. And the leadership that the Prime Minister has shown with respect to the PKK is leadership that he also has the ability to show with respect to the peace process. And so I think in many, many respects, a country as strong and as vibrant, as energized, and as transformative as Turkey can have a profound impact by being a partner in this process.
Thank you.